All right. So, you've been asked to do your first sex therapy session. What are we going to do about that? This is a brief video to help allay the concern and help you feel a little more confident going into that session. And basically, to give you, as a more experienced sex therapist, um, what I would do, what I'm imagining in that first session, and what we're focusing on. So, I would say, first and foremost, if you have a question about what something is, I think it's okay to ask. I think it's also okay to write it down and to talk to us later in supervision and figure it out that way. Right? We don't necessarily need to know every single detail of everything. You don't need to feel like you need to know anything, and you don't need to feel like since you don't know something that that is bad or you're not good enough or you aren't supposed to be doing sex therapy. We had a situation early on where some clinician was asked if they knew what a word was, if they knew, what a specific sexual interest was. And they didn't. And the client needed to switch clinicians. And they switched clinicians to me because I happen to know what the word meant, more or less. They asked in the first session, "Hey, do you know what this means?" And I said, "I do." And they said, "Okay, good. I think you're the clinician. You're the clinician for me." And let me just say, I don't really think that that makes or breaks you as a clinician, whether you know what a particular word or a particular act is. I frankly think that if that clinician had been told what it was, she could have given them really good care and been there for them and been supportive for them and understood the cycle that they were in, right? But some of it does come down to what is the client thinking? And if you don't know a word and they ask you what it is, I would say, just like when a client asks you anything, be honest. No, I don't know what that is. I'm going to ask my supervisor about that one. I want to know more about that. I want to be able to understand that so that our work can be valuable. Even I don't need you to explain that to me, right? Or I would love to hear about your side of that. I'd love to hear how you interact with that. Right. In the example that I just gave, the example was cuckoldry, which is basically when you want to watch your partner having sex with someone else, right? And so what we did there, we could have asked, well, great. How did you first know that you wanted to wanted to experiment with cuckoldry? We could say, oh, that's so interesting. Tell me more about how that developed for you. Tell me more about what it means to you. What do you think about when that happens? How does it how does it feel? How does it feel in your body? Right? There's an emotional cycle inside that is connected to this specific sexual thing. And as therapists, the currency we're dealing with is emotion, right? So it doesn't have to be some sort of understanding that you already have about what a sexual act means in society or what it means or that that you don't have to be an encyclopedia of sexual terms, right? Because for us, we're interested in what's personal. That it's like you hear that and you say, "Oh, okay. Well, tell me about your connection to that. Yeah, why is that interesting to you? Why is that? What do you feel when you think about that?" And then for us, we are working that into a cycle that they're going through. And if they ask you if you know it, again, you can say, "Oh, I really don't have a lot of experience with that. I want to hear more about that from you, but I also want to go read about it on my own and make sure that I understand and make sure that I know everything there is to know about that." Right. And if they say, "Get out of here, we need a new therapist, you're not good enough, you're not going to be the right fit for us," that's actually okay too, right? Carolyn and I will back you up. We're not expecting perfection. We're not expecting people to know every single term of every single topic. And if they want to talk to us, then that's great. And we'll figure out something else if they really need to. But I think we can care about them because every situation that we deal with in therapy is different. There's no two clients that are identical. Even if we deal with a problem a million times, the million and first time can still be totally novel, totally new, totally different than all of our previous experience. I've had hundreds of affair couples and no two were even close to alike. I had people coming in at each other's throats, and I have had people come in and think, wow, like they're almost done processing this. You know, they've talked for hours. They're calm. They're collected. They're hurt, but they're understanding. They're talking. They're emotionally expressive, right? And so I think my desire for you in those moments would be, how do we fit this into an emotional cycle, either in the person or between the people if it's a couple? And so say someone comes in, let's do something a little more pedestrian, and I'll give you like more of a precise example. Let's say someone comes in and says, we have a desire discrepancy. I want to have sex more often than how often my partner does. That is very common, right? That is bread and butter sex therapy. And what I would say for you is, we're not going to try to fix that in the first session. We're not able to. This process takes time. We're going to get some information. We're going to process. We're going to sketch out a connection between how it interacts between the two of them. You know, sketch out some of that cyclical nature of the problem. And then what we're going to do is have them hopefully talk to each other, you know, have them share something between the two of them and go home. And then next time we're going to dig deeper into that cycle between them. Right. And so, and this may overlap some with kind of how to do an enactment or how to do EFT. And that's the frame that I'm coming from. We can always talk more about that in a different video. But when someone comes in and says, we have a desire discrepancy, we do not have the same sexual expectations for our relationship, the first thing I'm thinking of is, okay, well, is there a recent time? Is there an example that you could give me of a recent time that you two had a conflict about this? Right? Because I just want to know, what is the shape of the conflict? Who wants sex more often? Who wants sex less often? Eventually, why? What is intimidating? What is, you know, when the person that wants it less often hears a sexual advance, hears the desire of their partner, how are they responding? What are they saying? And so I would say, like, great, let's talk about a recent example. And I'll even sometimes say, it doesn't have to be the biggest one. It can be something relatively small. It can be something relatively, it doesn't have to be this colossal relationship ending fight. But they might say, well, last Saturday, John asked me if I wanted to have sex, and I said no. And I say, okay. Oftentimes, I want to go into the experience there. Like, what did it feel like when he asked? Right? Whoever kind of talks first, I'll probably go with them. If John goes first and says, I asked Jane and she said no, then I'm saying, okay, John, well, what was it like to ask? What were you feeling in that moment? And I think we want to get more information, right? So Jane says, I was asked and I felt worried and I didn't want to, and I was tired and I was stressed out, and it just seemed like more stress piled on top. Right then for me, I'm thinking, okay, so probably more of the withdrawing side, right? The person asking about sex is probably more of the pursuing side, right? They're advancing towards sex. They want more of it. The person who's parrying the request is probably the one that wants it less, who has a lower desire or a lower need for sex. And so what I would say there is like, okay, yeah, what did it feel like when he asked? And we don't need to figure all of it out at once. Really what I'm trying to get there is to kind of get the communication working, right? Jane says, yeah, well, it felt bad. I felt stressed and tired and I really didn't want to. And I would just might say to her, what would it be like to share that with your partner right here? You felt stressed, you felt tired, and the thought of sex made it hard for you because because it made you more tired, because it would take energy, right? We're trying to figure out what is going on in that moment for her, right? We want to find something small enough that she can share it with her partner. That's like, I was already stressed and the prospect of more sex stressed me out. Or the prospect of stress, the prospect of sex added to the stress that I was feeling. Boom, perfect. We might say, how would you feel to share that with him right now? We're just trying to get those strands of communication flowing. And he might say, if she shared that, we might say, great, what was it like to hear that, John? And he says, well, I don't like it. It's unfortunate, but I understand, right? Something like that. That it's like that, or he might say, that sucks and I hate it, right? And we can say, okay, yeah, you hate it, right? You really want to have sex with your partner. Tell me why. Tell me more about that, right? We're sort of switching over to him then. And we don't always have to get the person to do an enactment there, but I think a really quick and easy enactment is a really nice way to um, bridge the gap between the two of them. And so we might say to him, okay, great. Well, what is it about sex? What were you feeling in that moment? And a lot of times he'll say, well, I wanted to get off. She looked really good, like something kind of a surface level. And both people might do a surface level. They might say something surface level at first. And we just want to keep kind of dusting away that top layer like an archaeologist, chipping away slowly at what is happening between the two. And so we might say to him, okay, great. Well, what would it have meant if you did have sex? What would it feel like if she said, absolutely, John, I can't wait. Right? We're kind of giving him a little more something emotional to chew on there. And if we say, what would it be like if she responded enthusiastically, if she was excited, if she couldn't wait to have sex with you? Then he might say, well, that would be amazing. Right? And right there, right, I would feel very good about passing that over. Man, I just want you to feel so excited when you're thinking about having sex with me. That'd be a great enactment for John to pass, right? That it's like, oh yeah, that, I'm really, here's what it means for me. If you were really excited about having sex with me, I would feel great. And we want to dig into that more eventually, right? That's not the end of the story, but I think that might be the beginning of the story, right? Where we could have them say, and we might pass it back to her and she might say, oh, I get that, but I just don't feel it right now. Or she might say, screw that. I hate it. I'm never going to want it like you want me to. Right. Because we are treading in territory that is described by conflict potentially, right? There can be conflict between the members of the relationship about this topic. That's why they're here. Right. And so it's okay if there is conflict. It's okay if they respond and say, God, yeah, like, well, even if I said yes now, it's never going to be enough. Or, man, you always ask me and you never let me have a moment's peace about this, right? Tensions can rise and that's okay, right? We can hang in there when the tensions rise. We can respond. We can use our emotions there. Like, wow, that is hard. I'm sorry you're feeling that way. That is tough. Right. But that first idea in this first session, you don't have to fix it all. All we're doing is trying to get information back and forth. We're just trying to help them communicate. Right. And then as we move forward, we're going to talk about, like, what was it like to communicate today? Right. What was that about? And see, if you notice, this didn't take a lot of specialized knowledge or information about desire discrepancies. This didn't take, we didn't need to draw a chart about how libido works or about how it feels or anything like that. All we're doing is taking the issue and transferring it into an emotional loop between the two people. That it's like, here are the emotions that come into play, right? That for me, that would be what I would want you to be thinking about. In that example, in that situation, I want you to be able to say, okay, what emotions are coming into play? How do I know? And then how do we describe and express the emotions that are in play? Right? Sex therapy is often, there are times when it is more specialized. When someone says, hey, I've got vaginismus and here's why that, here's how that affects things. But very often, for a lot of the specific sexual disorders, ejaculatory stuff like premature or delayed ejaculation, pelvic pain, vaginismus, there are a lot of these are basically directly linked to anxiety. And so all we're doing, if someone says something like that, your best guess, your first thing you should ask is, man, how do you feel about that? Does it make you anxious? Does it make you worried? Right? And what happens when you have that worry? How does that worry affect how you show up sexually in the relationship? Right? That's what I want you to be asking. You don't need to have all that information. And if you have questions, write it down and we will do that work. But that first question should be, man, what is that like for you? What is it like to suffer from that? What is it like to be interested in that? What is it like to ask your partner that? What is it like to be asked? right? Anything, we just want to get a sense of their experience, help them share that. And if it's an individual session, have them share it as if their partner was there. Okay, hey, if your partner was here, what would you say to them? Right? Because we just want to make sure we understand that cycle of what's happening. And then we want to we want to just like explore the first pass through it. Okay. I think you're ready for your very first sex therapy session, or the first in a while, or the first that you can feel confident about. And if you have more questions, bring them to us. We'll talk about it. But I think this is a good starting point. This is the pep talk that I want to give you if you're moving into your first session and I don't happen to be available at that moment. This is what I want you to be hearing. So get in there, do what you came to do, get a sense of what's happening, have them communicate a little bit, or have them communicate as if their partner were there, and then write down any questions you have. And we'll talk about them, and then we'll pick up in that next session kind of at the conclusion of that process.